Before we jump into today's show, I've got a really exciting announcement to make. The autumn cohorts for Start Your Podcast group program are now open. There are 5 dates between September and October, and it's a 6-week program that will get you launched before Christmas. So if podcasting was on your to-do list this year, if you really want to get your podcast up and done by the end of 2023, then come and join me for one of those cohorts and let's make it happen. I have a free masterclass available for you called Understanding the Power of Podcasting. You can go over to donnaeade.com/masterclass, watch the masterclass and get access to that enrollment. I hope to see you in one of the autumn cohorts very soon. That's donnaeade.com/masterclass. Let's get back to the show. Welcome to the Society podcast, and today I have a very exciting treat for you all. Episode 13, and lucky for some, but lucky for us, we have a fantastic guest on the podcast today. Her name is Julie Brown, and she is an accredited visibility and mindset coach, author and journalist. She helps passionate and ambitious business owners develop strategies needed to increase their credibility and achieve success. Julie has featured in many media outlets, including The Guardian, Happiful magazine, Thrive Global and the Metro, and she is here today to teach us about free PR. Listen in. Welcome to the Society of Professional Wedding Vendors podcast. I would like to introduce you all to Julie Brown. She is an expert in free press, which is what we're going to talk about today. But first, I would like Julie just to introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what you do, where you've come from and how you got to where you are today.
Cool. Hi, everybody. Lovely to be here today. So I'm actually a visibility and mindset coach, and I help business owners get more eyes on their products and services. And yes, because I've been a journalist for 17 years as well, I'm a specialist in getting press coverage for business, basically getting more eyes on your prize. And by helping people get press coverage for their business, what I'm literally doing is increasing their visibility, their credibility and their impact. Now, I've worked on a ton of publications over 17 years, lots of websites as well, and I know how it works. I know what an editor's looking for. I've pressed the delete button so many times on people's ideas and pictures in. I know exactly what's going to make an editor look at what you're sending them. And that's what I want to talk to you about today.
Fantastic. Yeah, I get that bit of nerves if I'm going to send anything off, like, are they even going to look at it? So that's awesome. So what I wanted to talk about first is just why don't we just put all of our eggs into the social media basket? Everybody's on social media now. Why can't we just get our customers by throwing money at Facebook ads? Why do we need to look at the traditional press?
Well, that's an important question, isn't it? Because we're all on social media at the moment, busy writing stuff all day long. Press coverage versus social media, there's lots of things about that. But the biggest thing with press coverage is, A, it's free. So you don't have to spend any money on it at all, ever. You should never have to spend money on press coverage for your business. But also, the strongest thing about press coverage is that it's third-party endorsement like nothing else, really. Because you can talk till the birds come home on social media about your services and how good you are. People may or may not be listening, you don't really know. But the minute you get into the press, it's somebody else saying this person is actually pretty good. Because as an editor myself, I know full well that I would not give any pages in my magazine or any space on my website to somebody who's not good enough, who's not an expert, who doesn't know what they're doing. So immediately somebody sees you in the press, they know that you're pretty hot, you know what you're doing. And you can't get that anywhere else. You know, a client may give you a testimonial on Facebook, for instance, but that's still a client. It's not somebody who's also an expert in that field who's saying, you're pretty good at this, I want you in my magazine. And also with social media, you don't actually know who's looking. You don't know how many followers you've got that are actually true followers, or whether they've clicked on follow and then they haven't looked at your profile again. Whereas with the media, there's two things there, particularly with publications. They have an audience. They have people who buy their magazine or their newspaper every day or every month or every week, however often it is. And they're buying that because they want to read it. So they're true followers, they're true audience of that publication. Even a website, you know, if you If you find a website that you like, you're likely to visit it time and time again because you enjoy what you've seen there. And that's the difference with social media. Sometimes it just feels like you're sort of talking to a bit of a blank wall and you're not sure whether anybody's out there listening. But with media, that's really very different. You know that people you wouldn't buy a magazine if you're not going to read it. So it's an audience that are sat there waiting to hear from you.
Yeah.
And of course, once you have it, press coverage, then you can use it and use it and use it. You can be rolling it out for weeks, months, years. You can always talk about how you were featured in Forbes or the Happiful magazine or on Thrive Global, and you can just keep using that as a really strong piece of marketing. So it's good all the way around, really.
Yeah, and that's a good point, especially for the wedding industry. The bridal magazines are still a very big thing for brides. You know, they still want to go out, they literally clear the shelves of every bride magazine that's out there. So being able to get yourself in those magazines will actually, I think, be exactly what you say. It's like a badge of honor. Clients are going to respect it, but also other vendors are going to respect it and see that, oh, well, actually, this person must have something about them to have managed to get into that magazine. So
absolutely. Sorry, the other thing with social media as well, of course, is we're not in control of that.
No.
So one day you could wake up and Facebook's just disappeared for good. And
could you imagine?
I know, it'd be an absolute panic. It'd be another panic that we've got to deal with. And although obviously newspapers and magazines do get thrown away eventually, but you've still got that coverage. You can still put that on your website. You can still show people what an expert you are. Whereas if social media just disappears overnight, and you've put all your eggs in that one basket, you've got nothing. Yeah. It's the same when people say to me, should I bother building a website? And the answer is yes, for the same reason, really. If you build everything, all your courses, all your social media, all your audience stuff on a social media platform, and it disappears, you're nowhere really, are you? So
yeah, absolutely.
You've got to spread the load a little bit.
Absolutely. So you've convinced me I need to get myself some external press that's not on social media. So you've got three steps, I think, to take us through on how we can actually make that happen for ourselves. So why don't you take us through that?
So this is really exciting. I love talking about this stuff. And until, what is it now, 3.5 years ago, I actually worked in the corporate world. So I was a paid editor, a paid publisher as well. So I've only been employed for myself for the last 3.5 years. So it's quite new to me as well. But because of that, obviously I've got that whole experience of being on a magazine, on a newspaper, on websites, and I know how it works from that point of view. But now obviously I'm on the other side of the coin as a self-employed person, actually trying to get into the press as well. So I've got to do it from the other way around, which makes me ideal to be able to talk about it from both sides. So I'm hoping this makes some sense to people and is helpful too. And the first thing I want to talk about, and it might make people's toes curl up, is Twitter. Because when you're talking about press coverage, Twitter really is your best friend. Now, you don't really need to be massively active on there. You just have to have a profile, because it's one of the best places to find free press opportunities for your business, whatever your business is. And the reason for that is all the journalists, all the editors, all the publishers are all on Twitter. It's where they go for their news. It's where they go to find out what's going on in the world. It's where they find breaking news. And because of that, it's also the place they go to when they need some help with something. So if they're writing a feature, or they're putting together a TV programme, or they're developing a podcast and they need some help with that, they might need a quote or some expert advice or a tip, they'll go onto Twitter and they'll say, hey, I'm so-and-so from Grazia magazine, and I need somebody who's really, into fashion or into the latest fashion for brides, because I need a quote, or I need a top tip, or I need to do an interview. And basically, if you see that on Twitter, all you need to do is respond either with a message or just on the tweet, depending on what they've asked you to do.
Yeah.
And that's it. Then you could be the next person speaking to that journalist. So it's amazing place to get free coverage, and it's the best place to start as a newbie to press coverage, because often the things that they're shouting out for are quite small things, or a lot of them are, so you can get involved in a very small way. So for instance, you might just need to give a quote about why black is the new colour for wedding dresses.
Oh my God.
Let's hope not. That would be me probably. And even if you only need to give a top tip or a quote or a bit of an opinion, you'll still get your name and your website details alongside that. So your coverage might actually be quite small in the start-off phase of your press coverage career, but you still get the same credentials alongside it, which is absolutely fantastic. So it's worth being on there. So what I would do is make an account if you haven't already. If you have, great. And if you're active on there, even greater. But a good thing to do is, once you are on there, just do some research about what journalists and editors are on there that are within your field, and find them. They're all on there. And then, a bit like as you do with social media, the other social media platforms, if they're talking about something, if they're saying, I've got this fantastic new feature in this magazine this month, you could go on there and say, oh yeah, I've read that online and it's really good, I've really enjoyed it. Because believe me, as an editor, if people do that and then they contact you a bit further down the line for press coverage, you do remember that they've been talking to you on Twitter. Yeah. And the more you can do to get yourself in front of the press, the better, really. So get on there, engage with people, watch out for what they're asking for, any opportunities to get involved, and then just get involved. So there's 2 hashtags you can follow on Twitter that's going to help your life a lot easier, because it'll just put the press call outs right in front of your nose. And that's hashtag journal request and hashtag call out for pictures. And if you just use those 2, you'll just see lists and lists and lists of people wanting things. And it basically is just a tweet. Please, can you help me with this? I'm looking for that. I'm looking for the other. And particularly when there's something breaking in the news, like we've had, obviously, coronavirus and various other things going on this year, there's too much to remember. And a lot of people will be wanting opinions about that as well. So even if it's not, what I would say is, even if it's not within your sphere of your niche, but you've got an opinion on something, it's still worth getting involved, because even if it's not around anything to do with the wedding industry, you will still get your name and website against whatever you talk about. So I ask people to be creative, really, because you might see a call out that you think, well, I'm not 100% sure that is exactly what I'm looking for, but it might be that it could still be very useful. And I was thinking, when I was coming onto this podcast, about your industries, and I was thinking about florists in particular, because obviously if you're a florist and you do weddings, you are a knowledgeable florist. The fact that you just specialise on weddings doesn't mean you don't know anything else. So if you see a call out there from somebody, a magazine perhaps, asking for advice around the best budget flowers for Valentine's Day, that's something you could still answer the call out for, and still talk about what you think are the best budget flowers for Valentine's Day, and you'll still get your name and your website alongside that. So there's a link, but you're not actually talking about weddings. So get on there, open your eyes, just see what's out there and see what you can get involved. It's proper low-hanging fruit, I like to call it. It's steady to get involved, and if you just think a bit more creatively, you can get involved with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And that's really good, because there is a lot of vendors that don't just do weddings. So that does open up a lot of different areas for them. So that's a great tip to have. Awesome.
And I know people not everybody's on Twitter, but it's worth just having an account for that reason. You can make lists on Twitter, so you can put all the journalists in there, so it's dead easy to see what they're shouting out for. It really is an absolute minefield of information and places to get involved.
Fantastic. So Twitter, everybody, get on it. Okay, so now we know where to find our press requests. What's our next step?
Your next step really is knowing a little bit more what the editor is looking for when you're talking to them. Now, this is a little bit different. So with the call outs on Twitter, you're going to be responding to a very certain thing, like that, with the florist call I've just talked about. It might be somebody wanting a full feature, and you can talk to them about writing that full feature for them. But eventually you're going to want to start pitching your own ideas into the press. You've got an idea for a feature or a news story, or you've got an opinion, and you want to pitch that idea in to the press rather than them coming and calling out to you. And what's really important here from an editor's point of view is that the person doing that, pitching in to them, wanting coverage in their magazine or on their website, is that they know the publication and the website. And this is really important, because as an editor, I know that if you haven't done this work, I'll be able to tell straight away when you send your email in to me. And it makes an editor feel good if they know you've done your research, and makes them much more likely to want to use you if you've done your research. So what I'm thinking about there is, you have to know their reader. Because just like with our own clients, what we're doing when we're pitching into a magazine is thinking about what struggles can we help them overcome. So it's exactly the same question as you're asking with your own business, really. Who are my clients and what can I help them overcome? So when you look at a magazine, you've got to think, what is this magazine trying to do? Who are their readers and what are they trying to help them with? It's exactly the same question, really. So you're going to need to know that. You're going to need to know who their readers are. And you need to know that in a little bit of depth, really, just so that when you're pitching in your ideas, you can talk like you know who their readers are. And the editor will love that. So that's the first tip there. Then the next thing you need to do is think about the actual outlet itself, whether it's a website, a podcast, a TV programme, radio, magazine, newspaper, whatever it is, you're going to need to know that publication, website, podcast in some detail. And the reason for that is you need to know the sorts of topics they cover, how they cover them, what sort of sections they've got in their magazine. Because if you're going to pitch in an idea that's going to be accepted, you're going to have to show that you can write about what they want. I'll give you an example of that. I've worked on lots of different magazines, and I remember, this has happened loads of times actually, but the one that's sticking out in my mind is I worked on a gardening magazine once. I actually don't know a lot about gardening, but mine's doing it.
Me neither.
But I did get somebody pitching in, and I said this is just a one-off, it happened all the time, who wanted me to put their feature about a particular type of car in my magazine, in my motoring section. I was like, this is a gardening magazine, I don't have a motoring section. And you get that all the time, the people pitching in saying, could you put this in your beauty section? And it's a men's magazine, and it's just, what's happened there, of course, is the person's just written a pitch and just sent it out to whatever magazines they've got on their list, and not even worried about whether this is the appropriate place to send it. So it's really key that you know A, the audience, and B, the actual publication or wherever you're sending it to. And it's also good to know what they've been featuring in the last 6 to 12 months, if you can find that out, even if it's just as simple as a Google search, and take a look, because what you don't want to be doing is pitching in ideas that have already been covered. If it has been covered in the last 6 to 12 months, what you need to do there is think, well, what different spin can I put on this? What different angle can I put on it? And still pitch it in, but pitch it in a slightly different way. The editor will know that you've put in that work, definitely. From the way you write your feature pitch or your idea, they're going to know that you know what this place is about, and they're going to enjoy that fact. It's quite an insult, really, for an editor to get a pitch in when they can see straight away that the person doesn't know anything about their publication, because they are quite precious about them. So the more research you can do, the better, really. And above all else, that's the best tip I can give you. Do some research. Whatever else you do or don't do, as long as you've done that one thing, it'll stand you in really good stead.
I like that idea, and I think you have to personalise things as well. So it's a good idea, I'm guessing, to find the names of these editors, and I'm guessing Twitter's a good place for that. Like you said, they're all on there, and make sure that you are actually personalising your pitches to the editor that you're talking to, rather than just sending out a blanket, even if it is, like, obviously all wedding magazines cover weddings, so it's like, well, the audience is the same, but each publication is slightly different or aimed at a slightly different bride, so it's really important to sort of take that into account.
Definitely, and each magazine will have its own styling, where some might be slightly more formal than others, some might cater for younger brides, others might cater for a slightly older, one might be very contemporary, one very modern. You know, they all have differences. And yes, you're dead right about making sure you contact the right person. It isn't always the editor, but if you're in doubt, then do send it to the editor, and they'll want you to put their name on it, because, like, say, if you just say hello, they know that you've sent that pitch out to quite a few people. If you put hello Jane, you've probably still sent it out to quite a few people, but at least they know that you know their name. You've actually looked in their magazine to find out what their name is. Yes, you can find that out on Twitter, or even if you've got a copy of the magazine, which I'm guessing a lot of your audience will have, then you can usually find it in there as well.
So we know where to find it, we know who we're talking to. What's our next step?
The next step is to send your idea.
Yay!
Obviously, this is press coverage in 5 minutes flat, really. There's a lot more to go with this, but this is just giving a good grounding for what people should be thinking about, I hope, anyway. And the first really important thing for people to remember is that what an editor will take much more notice of is a feature pitch, an idea pitch, and not a press release. And this is where it goes wrong for quite a lot of people, is that they think they can write a press release and that's just going to get sent out to one or many places and somebody will pick it up. But that actually doesn't work at all, because the way that an editor views a press release is an announcement. It's usually a piece of news. Either somebody's won an award, or somebody's got a new product coming out, or that somebody's opening a new shop somewhere. It's sort of an announcement of something happening. And most consumer magazines are not really interested in that sort of content. You know, if you read any consumer magazine, very rarely do you see anything in there about somebody's won an award or somebody's opening a new shop. That's just not what they're interested in. They're interested in sort of stories, really, ideas that are going to help their audience. So it could be a feature for how to something, you know, how to make a bride look radiant on the day, how to make sure that the bridesmaids behave on the day, you know, whatever they're covering, really. It's that sort of, you know, topic that's going to be really useful that they're interested in. It's more of a story than a press release. And it's important to get that across, because the minute an editor sees a press release in a magazine, they quite often will hit delete without even looking at it. Now, it's different if you're a company that's dealing with a business to business sort of magazine. So if it's a trade magazine, that is a little bit different, and that probably is some of your audience. So if you're sending an idea to a trade magazine, then they probably would be interested to hear you've won an award, or that you've got a new shop opening or a new outlet. But if it's definitely, if it's a real consumer magazine where brides are going to be looking for information, then that editor is going to be wanting something more than a press release. They're going to want a pitch idea. So that's the first thing, don't send a press release. The second thing is to always use email. Editors don't like to be called anymore.
Nobody likes to be called anymore. No. These things called phones, they're never used for actual phone calls anymore.
Not at all. Who would want to make a phone call? That's just silly. And that's because it's just easier for her to deal with an email, and she can leave it for later if she needs to. If you ring an editor up and they're right in the middle of something that's keeping them busy, maybe they've got a bit of a crisis on, the last thing they need is somebody ringing them saying, I've got an idea for you. Just put it on an email and keep it quite short. Mostly don't need the full feature. They want an idea, sort of a top line. This is what my idea is. This is what I'm going to cover. This is why it's going to be really good for your magazine. You don't need it to be much more than that. Saying that, a good thing to do before you pitch into the press is to just Google online and see if you can find some guidelines about what they want. Most do just want an idea, because it's a waste of your time and their time for you to send them a long feature that you've already written if they don't want it, because you've already put the work in. They've got to read it, and then if they don't want it, it's like just not working for anybody really. So mostly they just want an idea. So that idea should be quite short. It's all about what you can do for their audience, why you're doing it now. That's quite important. Why is this story important to tell now, and the real benefits that people are going to get from reading it. Now, the one thing they're not going to want to know about right at the top, and again, just like the press release thing, this is where a lot of people go wrong, is they're not going to want to know about you up front. They want to know about the idea.
They don't want to know about me?
I know. Makes you want to cry into your tea, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that's the last thing they want to know about, really. They want to know, first off, they just want to know what this idea is and whether it's going to be good for their magazine. And if that intrigues them enough, then they'll carry on reading. And what you do is you put your contact details and your little bios at the end there, because obviously they're going to want to know who you are. They're going to want to know what you're doing and that you're an expert at what you do. But that's not the first thing they're interested in. The first thing they're interested in is, how is this going to help my readers? Why is this good for my magazine? And why now? And the old contact thing is quite important, because when you do put your contact details in there, make sure that you put what you want to go in the magazine on there, because it's your responsibility to do that. If you don't do that, they might just publish it without your contact details, because they may not chase you for them. So it's sort of short, feature idea up front, why it's important to their readers, why it's important now, how you're going to help their readers overcome whatever struggle they've got going on, or how you're going to inspire them, or how you're going to advise them, whatever it is that you're trying to do for their readers. And then it's about you at the end, and then send it. And once you've done that, I would leave it at least a week before you think of following up. And I would follow up just once by email to say, I sent you this idea last week, whenever it was, put the date off, forward the email. I'm just now wondering whether this is of interest to you. I'd love to hear back from you if it was, blah, 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 and then sign off and leave it. And if you don't hear from them again within a week, I'd just move on to someone else and just pitch it somewhere else, because you're very unlikely, and it's a bit sad, I know, but you're very unlikely to hear back from them if it's a no. You will only hear back from them if it's a yes, because lots of editors get tons of emails every day from people asking them for coverage in their magazine, and they haven't got time to say no to everybody, sadly. So if you haven't heard back, you just have to assume it's a no and move on. So what I would suggest, particularly with an email, is one of the ways to get a journalist to open it is to, in the subject of the email, put feature idea or pitch idea, story idea, whatever you want it to be, and then actually put what the feature idea is. So if you were writing, how to keep your young bridesmaids in control all day, that is the title of your email. You put story idea, how to keep your young bridesmaids in control all day. So they know that you've got a story in there. It's not just generic, it's not just a press release, it's something that's actually got some big meat behind it. That's much more likely to get them to open it than just something that says hello or please open, or however else you want to put, whatever
please open.
Please open. Please read my stuff. So just be really cute with the email subject header. Make it quite strong and sort of attention grabbing, so that when they're scrolling through all their emails, it stops them in their tracks. which if you say if you're sending them a press release and it just says, new company wins award, that's probably just going to go straight in the bin. So make it really specific to A, to their magazine, B, to their audience, and then just be really strong in the headline of the email to make sure that they open it up.
Fantastic. Well, now I know. And my thing is I'm quite a sensitive person. So, if they don't respond to me, I might get a bit upset. But does that mean that I shouldn't bother sending them anything else ever again? They're just not interested in me.
Absolutely not. You never think like that. If you're going to deal with the press, you do have to have a bit of a thick skin. When you get nothing back, it's most likely nothing to do with you. It's likely to be it just wasn't the right time for them, or they've already done it at some point, you're not aware of that, or their magazine's full, because obviously they've only got so many pages to play with, because advertisers got to be in there as well, and they might just be full. Because that's the other key thing to be aware of. They do plan a long way in advance, particularly a magazine. If you're looking at a website, that's slightly easier because they can be much more flexible with that. A website is an ever-growing place, really. They can just keep putting content on and on and on. It never gets full. Whereas if with a magazine, if they've got 80 editorial pages and they've already got content for those 80 pages, you're not going to get in there. It doesn't mean they haven't kept it, and you might hear back from them a long time down the road. But what I wouldn't do is let it stop you sending that pitch to somewhere else. Really, if you haven't heard of them 2 or 3 weeks, I'd just send it somewhere else and just try there. But definitely go back to them. Absolutely, definitely. Go back to them. Don't just leave it. Just thinking about time in there. When I say that they do plan a long way in advance, I'm talking like 3 or 4 months in advance. And a lot of people want coverage for Christmas time. I guess even bridal magazines, are wanting stuff over that period, because people might be wanting to buy presents for folk that is wedding related, or you might be wanting to get your latest ideas on the flowers for next year, or the gown colour for next year, or whatever it is. And if you're looking to do that sort of content for a magazine, you need to be pitching to them in July. It's called Christmas in July. So
that's crazy.
If it's not Christmas time, I would say pitch in your idea 4 months before you want it to appear. If it's Christmas, then pitch it in July if you want it to appear in the Christmas editions, because Christmas editions probably come out early November. So you need to get those pictures in. So
can you just take us through what those 3 steps are again in a nutshell, just in case we missed anything?
Yes, of course. First off, go onto Twitter, get yourself an account on there if you haven't already got one, and start following the journalists that are relative to your area of expertise and the magazines and things that you're going to want to talk to. Perhaps make a Twitter list of them so you can look at them quite quickly. Use the hashtag journal request and call for pictures, and then do some research before you start targeting any magazine or any podcast website. Do some research about who their audience are, what style they take, what sort of features they enjoy running, what things they've done in the past so you're not duplicating. Just sort of make them feel good about the fact that you know something about their magazine. And then when you're sending in your ideas, don't send a press release, send a pitch, make it really targeted, and don't talk about yourself first.
Thank you so much for that, Julie. Really appreciate it. I think you have got something for our audience as well.
I have, yes. I've got a little freebie for everybody. It's called How to Be a PR Magnet, and it's a V-book, which I know sounds very exciting, doesn't it?
Ooh,
a little
yes.
V-book. Basically what it is, you download it and it looks a bit like a PDF, but it's actually got videos in it that play.
Oh, fantastic.
To find them. So it's quite exciting. It's the first one I've ever done. Ooh. So yeah, I'd love people to download that. There's 5 different videos covering 5 different parts of getting free press coverage for your business. Fantastic. And I hope people find it really useful. Obviously, I'll give you the link so you can put it in the show notes, and people can just click on it and away they go.
Brilliant. So yeah, that will be over on the website in the show notes, guys, so do head over. Thank you again, Julie, for coming on and sharing that with us. I will make sure that all of your links are also in the show notes so everybody can find out where you are and what you're up to and connect with you. So thanks very much. So there you have it, guys. 3 great steps to getting yourself free press from Julie Brown there. Thank you so much, Julie, for coming on the show. I certainly picked up some great tips, so I hope you did too, and I will see you again same time, same place next week. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.